I'll just wait to see the confirmation that we're recording. Yes, so you can see this back. I'll kick off. So yeah, afternoon everybody. Delighted to be with you again, having done the Y Factor the first time. If you and I say this, these two bits for me. So if you've not seen the Y Factor, please go and watch it back on demand. Because I think these two together for me are absolute game changers, and I don't use that term very often, but the two subjects we've done so far, and this is the one being the second one, are absolute game changers for me. Makes huge difference to you. Now, if you're familiar or not familiar with the Art of Brilliance, I'm just going to kind of bring up this is where my heart goes in my mouth, that actually you'll be able to see my presentation. So just give me a second and just give me a thumbs up in the chat function that you can actually see it. So it should say coming up with brilliant strengths. Can you see yellow slide, lots of social media details for me, and a beep beep car in the top. Give me thumbs up, or in chat say yes, we can see it. That's great, fabulous. So yeah, I don't use game changer very often, but I'm going to be really clear with this now, because I think the conversation and switching this to your strength, I think, is massive. As we say, kind of talking about kind of we talk about your 2%er. You at your best. When we talk about your happiness chart, about kind of as you see it, you will be, lots of people will be in different areas, and you will be at different areas at different times. What we talk about, everything we're talking about, is keeping you at the top of your chart. What do you like when you're at the top of your chart? How much time do you spend with it? Or we call them 2%ers, or you in 2% mode, because it's about 2% of the population are at the top of their happiness chart for the majority of the time. Not all the time, majority of the time. And then you'll probably spend a lot of the time maybe in that perfectly fine category. And what I hope you don't spend a lot of time in is not quite you at your best. We would traditionally, and when you see us fade, we call that zone your mood hoover zone. It's not depression or anxiety or anything like that. That's hugely serious in the UK and is below the line. But actually for me, it's like, I don't want you to be down. I want you in your 2% zone more often. And I think for me, understanding purpose, understanding why you do what you do, is a huge factor in actually being able to be there, but also being able to play to your strengths more often. So let me just give you a quick intro to me. And I am in that photograph, by the way. I am always the grey hair of the guy with glasses. I don't tend to change, but this is a group of women I work with. So I work with a lot of people kind of face-to-face, one-to-one, or in groups. And this is a group of women who constantly inspire me, because this, if you're into football, this is UEFA's female referees, by the way. This is a group of women who have constantly been told that they can't do what they want to do. Why can't they be a referee? Well, they're a girl, or they come from a country where the national team is not that good. Now, really, what's that got to do with anything? First question I think I asked them a few years ago was, which one of you is going to referee the Men's World Cup final? Well, one of them will. Why not them? And for me, kind of my simple philosophy to life that kind of drives me every day, part of my reason why, is that I think you are all incredible people, capable of incredible things, but there's one thing that consistently gets in your way, which is what? What's my one thing? Put it in the chat, open your mics up, talk to me out loud. I don't really mind.
Me.
You, yeah. You do get in your own way all the time. So what I love about these sessions is this, yeah, Jesse, everybody, ourselves, there you go. What I love about these sessions is it gives you an hour. Let's get out of our own way. Let's focus in on you. You at your best in that 2% zone. So what do you like? One of the things I'd like you to think about is kind of that version of you. And because for me, when you're up there, what you're doing is not only are you following your purpose, but you're playing to your strengths more often. So let me just ask you a question around that 2% version of you. Can you give me again, please share it, or maybe give me a few. I would love you to speak to me directly, open your mics up. A time kind of recently when you were feeling that high level of being you. Well, what that felt like this is what I was born to do. This is the real me. What were you doing? Describe yourself to me, and what were you doing? Because in there, I think, is you playing to your strengths. So has anybody got a time recently where you felt like, you know what, I'm on fire. I'm just that incredible me. What have you got? Somebody talk to me. Interesting. How often, or describe to me what you like when you're up there. So I don't know, volunteering. Leslie, tell me more about volunteering. So when is there a specific group you volunteer for?
No, it was a one-off. It was county show, and it was the Churches Together tent, and I'd never done it before, and I just saw there was an advert for it and went. So it was sort of like chaplaincy stuff, but it was, when I was there, I just realised I suddenly came alive. It's about community stuff and getting alongside people. There were loads of Ukrainian women with their children, and just meeting lots of family, and people just opened up and talked, and it was just I just knew I was alive in that, in a different way.
And what a feeling! What a feeling!
Yeah.
What a feeling! That feeling alive and feeling like you doing something different, putting yourself out your comfort zone, probably, because you probably thought, oh, don't know about that. But actually, that would know. I mean, what gets me thinking now, Leslie, that talks about your purpose, and it talks about you bringing those strengths into play more often. And Ruth, interviewing somebody at work about a project he was really inspired about. I don't know, Ruth, if you've got the ability to just tell me a little bit more about that by opening your mic up for me. You didn't realise there was going to be supplementary questions. What was it about that interview process that kind of brought you alive?
It was lovely to meet someone new. It was lovely to meet someone who is really working and doing really valuable things for people who use our services. So and it was about a project that I was also really interested in, because it's to do with sort of hedgerow management and woodworking skills and things like that. So I loved the subject. It was great to meet him. It was great to meet a clinical member of staff as well, and I just really enjoyed it.
You said hedgerow, didn't you? I thought you said hedge.
No, hedgerow.
It's a hedge fund. I'm thinking, crikey. The thing is, again, it's like underneath that there is things there. There's Sarah, kind of, again, Sarah, if you're happy to share, come on. Camping in Cornwall for a week as a family with no electric hookup. No, Sarah, how did you cope without phone signal? So a full week.
It was amazing, and we've got a 5-year-old child as well, and she was happy all week. So yeah, we read books, and I loved not having my phone. I have to say, it was lovely. Yeah, and I noticed a real difference and thought, I need to pay attention to this when I go home and put that phone down when I'm at home and having downtime and stuff.
Yeah, I think there's weapons of mass distraction. That's what they are, kind of a thing. Yeah, being aware of it to be able to do it. But also, I would think you have to be quite I can't think of the word. Ingenious about what you get what you did as a family and kind of stuff you did, because actually without these things, which we're so reliant on really and aware of, you've got to do different stuff. And your 5-year-old doing it. And Nikki's Nikki's kind of volunteered Limb Power as a charity for amputees. Again, Nikki, if you want to tell us a little bit more, I'd love to hear from it. But feels to me that these two categories and things we've been talking about are hugely linked with everything you are all talking about, because this starts to play to your strengths. Now we're going to play a little game of Guess Who, and before you kind of think what we're doing, who it is. It's not the person behind the piece of paper. That's just a random picture off the internet that I use. But in our book, the leadership book, we talk about, we describe somebody. So let me describe this person, and kind of when you think you know who this person is, in the chat function, could you please just have a guess who it is? So when this person was growing up, they were referred to by their family as the dopey one. They struggled with words to the point where their family thought they would never learn to speak. Struggled at school, uneven grades, one teacher telling them that they'd never amount to anything and they were wasting everybody else's time. Any guesses? Wanted to be a teacher. No, not Richard Branson. Good guess there, Nikki. Eeyore. Oh, great answer, but not quite. Jessica, again, another Richard Branson. So let's one more. Lord Sugar. Good questions, but not right. Yes, Judith. There you go, Judith. Point to you. Albert Einstein. And Nicola kind of Albert Einstein was kind of that person, because they wanted to be a teacher. Einstein wanted to be a teacher, but it took him 9 years to land his first teaching grades. And if that wasn't enough, really, he was renowned for being unbelievably absent-minded, to the point where he could never remember his own telephone number. And his wife used to have to, the kind of urban myth, I don't know, his wife used to have to kind of tie his house keys to his belt because he was forever losing them. Now, what were we describing at the start of that? What did I give you a list of? Tell me in the chat. Again, you can open the mics up and tell me directly. That's fine. The negatives, yeah. Everything that all his weaknesses, everything he couldn't do. Thankfully for us, and kind of, I think Time magazine described him as the person of the 20th century. He didn't look at that. He looked at his strengths. What did he do well? His strength lay in creative thinking. Kind of, he imagined himself sat on a bullet traveling at the speed of light or whatever it was. Kind of, did he go in a straight line or would he go in a curve? I say Time magazine, person of the 20th century, we might probably not have known about him if he'd have focused on his weaknesses. Now, really clear to kind of set you up is this is not about not working on your weaknesses, because I think the question I might ask you is, what do you think? I mean, I'm probably taking you down a garden path here, but actually, what do you think is going to make you more successful in life? Building on your strengths or fixing your weaknesses? Where do you think? Yeah, building on your strengths. Yeah, I think strengths, absolutely. I'm with you. A combination of both, Nikki. I like that. But why only 38% of people think strengths are there? Both. Now, I think weakness. I'm not telling you not to work on your strengths. This is not a kind of, I don't want anybody coming back to me saying, well, whoever you work for, going, well, this guy on a webinar told me to kind of not focus on my weaknesses, so you're gonna have to live with it. However, I don't want you to be all about it. I know, from my experience from my corporate background, every conversation I had on a yearly basis around my performance, we would talk about my strengths and weaknesses, but my development plan would always be around my weaknesses. Yeah, who decides what weaknesses are? Interesting, Nikki. But I think it's like what you do well. This 2%ness that we're talking about, getting you up there more often, is when you bring it back to be kind of stuff you play and bring your strengths more into play. Now, hopefully this works, because if you look at some of the strength-based approach, so if you look at strengths-based research into strength-based organizations, the conversations are starting to switch. If you look at it, if you look at it kind of looking to use people's strengths more often has a 36% increase in people's performance. Not insignificant. I'll share some other stuff with you. Up to the 73% increase in engagement. Now, I work with a lot of people around kind of engaged employees, but if we're looking at something quite simple, bringing your strengths into play, you get a bigger increase in engagement. And 90% of people who use them more often feel more positive and more solutions focused. Because again, this whole thing around, so it's a shift in conversation. It's like, I'm not asking you to kind of completely ignore your weaknesses, but I'm not asking you to, what I'm asking you to do is maybe switch the situation, maybe look at it from a point of view difference. Because research would tell you that performance comes from giving meaningful work, which builds on what we talked about, why you're doing it, and leverages their personal strengths. Because this is a scary kind of stat for me, really, is that research would say that nearly 20% of employees are actively disengaged in what they're doing. And disengaged means they're in some way, I think, going against the organization that they work for. And the further 62% is probably in that, what I would know with two teenagers is that teenager feeling of a little bit neither engaged nor disengaged. That's a huge proportion of the organization that actually is not really engaged in what we're doing. And I think for me, this is where we can start switching the conversation is, what do we know about our strengths? How can we bring them in play? And I'm just going to show you, I'm going to mute myself. So when this video plays, please let me know, because I'll mute myself, because I think if I don't mute myself on Teams, then you'll get a load of echo from behind it. Let me know you can hear it okay or not, as the case may be. But just have a listen to Marcus Buckingham, who talks about strengths really well. I think that's massive from what he says, because actually for me, and this I'm going to give you a definition of strength. This is the stuff that kind of brings you alive. And actually what he says is, I think it's undeniable. The research is becoming undeniable that actually this whole thing around strengths-based organizations is becoming more powerful. Now, I'm a strengths coach practitioner, and this kind of how I define a strength based on what I've learned is something that you're good at or have the potential to be good at. But the key thing is what energizes you. Does it bring you alive? Does it kind of give you that feeling? Because if it doesn't, then that's a learned behavior. Because we've all got stuff, and we've all got people say to you all the time, oh, that must be a strength of yours because you're really good at it. I think the only person who can really determine whether that's a strength of yours is you. Because the energizing bit for me is the key bit. Is what energizes you. We've all got learned behaviors. We've learned to be good at it because we have to be good at it. But if it doesn't give you energy, if it energizes you, then that's the kind of thing. Oh, maybe mine was fine. I've got some comments there. I'm not quite sure. Let me know if it's getting. But actually, for me, that's the key thing. What energizes you? Now, it's not. If you look, those figures that he showed, this comes from Gallup. So Gallup, the survey people, 40 years of research. One of the biggest single factors of that team performance and stuff is this. They asked the Q12 questions on engagement, and one of the key ones is, at work, do I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day? And that's not every minute of every day. That's at least once a day. Now, from that video that Marcus was talking about, kind of less than 20% do that. In fact, in the UK, that figure is 17%. So 17% of people can answer the question, yes, that they bring the strengths in play. Things that energize you. Now, I don't know whether there's kind of 50 odd people, 60 people on the call today. Now, if that was us as a team, we have a great opportunity to maybe start doing things a little bit differently. How do we do that? How do we understand what they might be, and how could we bring into play more often? Looking beyond, for me, job descriptions, job titles. What do these things need, and who are the best people to do it? Again, weaknesses kind of good enough, but actually, how do we do that? Because I mean, some of you will remember this person. Anybody remember who is it? Tell me. There'll be a few younger viewers.
Daley Thompson.
Thank you. You know, there's a few younger viewers I sometimes talk to who don't know who he is. And for me, it's like, yeah, and I just having to pick on what Valerie said, I'm sure most people leave because they're not doing what they came to do, having to do things they don't like. Yeah, I think absolutely, Valerie, kind of, but actually, if we could start shifting that, so you did a few things that kind of brought you energy, you will all do stuff we don't like. And it's not about doing things you don't like or you're not great at, because there's always things we've got to do. But if we could bring this into play more often to shift that percentage from 17% to more like 50 or 60 or even higher, that we're getting the opportunity to energize stuff, I think we're more likely to be able to get through some of that stuff because it's enabling us to do that. Now, Daley Thompson, if you remember him, decathlete, one of Britain's greatest athletes for me in the days when the GB only won 1 or 2 gold medals. You could probably put your house on Daley winning one of them. But decathlete, 10 events, final event was the 1500 meters. Those of you who remembered Daley Thompson, what was Daley Thompson like in the 1500 meters? Do you remember?
Not good.
Not good. Yeah, I think that's an understatement. Yeah, not good. In fact, he used to jog around, didn't he? He used to be like this. And I used to think, I mean, I'm no runner, and I used to think I could beat him around 1500 meters. The crucial thing is he was already out of sight. So the 9 events previously, he was so good at them, he got out of sight. So actually, there was one thing though in the 1500 meters that he did have to do, which was what? Finish. Yeah. So his weakness had to be good enough, because the rest of it was there. Yeah. Thanks, Helen. But actually, so for me, but I would think about it. If you think about it, I don't know. In my experience, and maybe in some of yours, is I could just imagine Daley sitting down and having a performance review with some of the organisations I worked in, and I kind of think it would go something like this: like, actually, do you know what, Daley? You're not really very good at 1500 meters, are you? So let's get you just running, getting that fitness up, running, so the speed is up. So the 1500 meters is a lot bigger event, so a lot stronger event. You're much better at it. Now, if we get people focused on that, or get daily focus on that, what's happening to his other 9 events or the other ones that he's really strong at? His performance drops, doesn't he? So he becomes mediocre. Again, same with us. Is I remember, you might, something similar is like conversations at home around when school reports came out. I don't know, kind of, if you say, I don't know, English A, Maths A, History B, Geography F. Now the conversation would be at home is like, what's happened to geography? We need to put a lot, you need to put a lot more effort into geography to get that up. Again, now if I put all my effort in geography, I might make it a C. But what's happening to my A's when I'm doing that? They're starting to drop. So again, getting the balance right, good enough, but actually, how could we start shifting that conversation a little bit more into playing to our strengths more often? Now, if you look at this, that figure around disengagement, about what we talked about earlier, you can look about what do you talk to people about? Again, if people you work with, work for, kind of, what are the conversations? Now, if you look at, if we talk about people, only 24% of the time we talk about strengths. Then we look at 36%, we talk about our weaknesses, and then kind of 40% of the time we don't talk about either. So again, the shift in the conversation for me is a pivot, really, rather than kind of what can we learn about them? What do we know about them? How can we do that? If you talk about kind of disengagement, if you primarily talk to, if your private manager or who you work with ignores you, you're 40% likely to be disengaged in what you do. If you look at what we focus on your weaknesses, you're 22% likely to be disengaged in what you do. But if we focus on your strengths, what you do well, what energizes you, you're only 1% likely to be disengaged in what you do. Subtle shift, evidence. Okay, particularly in our field, Art of Brilliance, really look at well-being. How do we support you? How do we support you being that best version of yourself? When you play to your strengths more often or bring them into play more often, is the evidence. You are happier. Now that something we all have in common, isn't it? That we all want to be happy. We're happier when we do that, more confident. Our levels of self-esteem rise. Our energy goes up. We're less stressed. We're more resilient. We're more likely to achieve our goals and perform better at work. And kind of bringing that together, I think it becomes undeniable. Look at the figure I talked at the front about 36% improvement in performance comes from the Corporate Leadership Council. Increase in performance of 36.4% by focusing it, whereas if we focus on people's weaknesses, there is a performance decline of nearly 27%. Now that's a huge shift for me. And again, it's a subtle thing around actually what do we do? If we talk about engagement, and I don't know, do you run engagement surveys and things like that, how engaged you are in the work that you do? Lots of things going on. If you don't kind of, and if people are, lots of organizations do this. No, you don't do it. But actually, if you want to raise engagement about what's going on, this is a simple thing. Now, if you were in the, let's just imagine for a minute you were in a profit business or you were working with people in a profit business. I know that you're not, but actually, I think if we had this conversation with most chief execs where we kind of went as a team and said, right, here's a way of potentially improving your profits by up to 85%. I think most chief execs would probably kind of cut our hands off to get to it. And it's as simple as that strength-based conversation. So if we optimize employee strength, there's that figure again of an increase in performance. Staff engagement is measured 4 times a year in the NHS staff survey reports. Cool, great. Again, I wonder, Catherine, how that would change if we subtle change in conversation, if the conversation is around strength. So in up to 73% improvement in engagement by just optimizing people's strengths. Now, if we do that, then we lead to a more engaged workforce, leads to greater customer experiences. Okay, if we're in that game. But again, that leads to customer loyalty, a 44% or up to 44% improvement in customer loyalty, and that only a 5% improvement will lead to an increase in profits. A simple chain reaction by changing the conversation around actually what do you do well and what brings you alive. You talked about it. I heard you talk. We talked, didn't we, about kind of that volunteering and kind of in that you felt alive. That's the stuff they're doing because you're doing something that you do well or have the potential to do well. But the crucial thing for me is it energizes you. So how do we spot this? How can we do this? I don't know whether has anybody ever done any strength scope as a strength scope practitioner, any strength scope questionnaires or looked at it from a performance perspective around what do you do? How do you do it? So there's a number of different things if you haven't. And we're not talking about jobs or tasks or anything like that. We talk about, so I talk about character strengths. Okay, what are you like? Now, there's one thing you can do quite easily to look at is what maybe does your diary look like? If you look through your diary of what you've got to do or to-do lists or whatever stuff, you can quickly put them in a category of love and loathe. Okay, so the stuff that you're genuinely looking forward to in your calendars, in your diaries, I would say is something around actually something that pulls on that strength. It energizes you. Now, the loathe bit, you might have to be good at that. It might pull on a weakness, but you need to be good enough at it to do it. But there's a very simple thing you can do. There's also, I will send this link to you because somebody might know it. So Martin Seligman, who is probably the godfather of positive psychology, where we're based really, has a free 250 question questionnaire on his VIA.com website where you can go to Strengths Finder, and he has a free 250 question you can do, and it sends you back a report on what your top five strengths on. So I don't, if anybody's got the internet available, see if you can find it. If not, I will send the link across to Abby so she can share it with you, because it's worth doing. Too long for me, doesn't pull to one of my strengths because I don't do detail very well. So 250 questions, I get bored. We look at it in a different way. But again, I would be asking you to kind of look at what your top three maybe are and how could you bring them to play more often. Just have a listen to this guy called David Poulet. He's talking about a strength-based, or what pulls on strength, an experience he had when he was a kid. Let's have a listen. Yeah, I think it's an interesting video. And David, I will come to your question in pointing. So, is anybody from your experience when you were a kid, somebody pointed something out or told that same story about something about you that you've continued to do to this day? You may have the opposite. Somebody might have said something negative about you, so you don't do it. It's like me. I mean, whenever I talk to people, I'm left-handed, by the way. So if anybody, fellow left-handers, you might have the same story as me. But I wasn't told I was good at something. I was told I was no good. Well, my dad used to take, when I used to try and help him do DIY or anything he was doing, he used to take the hammer and screwdrivers out of my hand and tell me I looked awkward. So I don't do it. I still don't do it to this day. But actually, have anybody got the experience of the opposite, where somebody did point out the strength, that good packer in you, that you continue to do this to this day? Interesting. Yes, Jessica.
Not that I've got a memory of anyone pointing it out to me, but just watching that, I suppose it's just reminding me, I've got a 5-year-old, and lots of us, well, how important it is that you don't say, oh, well, I try not to be a good girl, or those sorts of things. It's actually, I'm proud of you because I can see how hard you're trying to colour in the lines, or what, naming actually what you're seeing really, really well. So it's not about winning, it's not about being the best, it's naming, like you say, being it. I'm never going to be a good packer, though, just for information to everyone. That's something that's never going to be one of my strengths. But yeah, it's so important, isn't it, to name what is what you're seeing, rather than just using terms that we might have used more historically.
Yeah, I think definitely tell the story. Why? What is it that you're seeing them do? Because they'll do more of it.
Yeah, and that goes for us as well, though, doesn't it? It's not just, it was making me think about being a mum, but it's the same in the workplace when you observe somebody doing something, outstanding or really, really well, or seeing their strengths, actually, naming what you see in them and back to them. Yeah,
because we kind of traditionally maybe have experienced well done. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that, but actually, well done. But what is it you're recognizing in me? If you can, if I'm being recognized for that, I'm more likely to do more of it. I don't know whether have you come across the research around the Lasada line? So the Lasada line is really interesting because it's about feedback, positive to negative. David, and I've not forgotten, I will come back to it. Now, Lasada found some research is that the minimum level of feedback, positive to negative, for a relationship, any relationship to survive, is 3 to 1. 3 bits of positive for every 1 bit of negative. And it's calling it, just picking on what Jessica said, it's calling it out, being really specific. Now, the line goes from 0 to 1 to 12 to 1. Now, below that line, below the minimum 3 to 1, this is where people languish. Relationships break down, creativity dies, productivity falls. Now, the feedback sandwich we all might have grown up with and know about, bit of good, bit of bad, bit of good, is below that line, is only 2 to 1. So it's not enough. Above that line, this is where you flourish. Relationships enhance, productivity rises, creativity thrives. Now the line goes to 12 to 1. But the key thing for me is that all high performing teams, and I mean all high performing teams, that relationship between positive and negative feedback is 6 to 1. 6 bits of positive and 1 bit of negative, but it's not kind of benign bits just to kind of get the 6 in. It's, as Jessica says, calling out what you're seeing. So I think one of the things is, what are you giving, what are you getting? Because what they found from the research is that people, when you get the balance right, is people will do more of the 6. So calling it out, they'll do more of that because they go, yeah, that's great. People recognizing me for doing that, so I'll do more of that. And they'll definitely do something about the 1. Whereas it becomes a bit noise, a bit benign. It's just noise, and they don't do anything about anything. And I'm just picking up something, and David, don't worry, I will come back to it. Valerie was saying, as a child, I was called bossy, which made me hold back. Yeah, then as an adult on a leadership program, I was told I was a natural leader, which gave me more confidence to step forward. Again, recognizing what they see. It might be an opinion, bossy, but actually calling it out, because then you'll do more of it. So again, whether it's children, or you can practice children, but also with your colleagues, is calling out the good stuff, calling out their good packer in them, But I think what David's talking about around actually where you see a strength and a weakness in a process. The thing I think for me with that is maybe look at the structure. Okay, for me, when I work in this environment and stuff like that, it's like, let's have a look at what our overall aim is, what our overall we're responsible for. Maybe there's an opportunity to structure it differently for people to do different things. Now, I'm not saying the person who's good at the customer facing bit and weak at the process bit gets to not do the process bit, because I would want their weakness to be good enough so it was processed properly. However, I would be looking at how I can use the team or that strength of that person a little bit more, because if they've clearly got a really good strength of customer facing, we've got an opportunity to do it a little bit more often. But actually, there may be a strength somewhere else with people around organisation or whatever that means that the order process, we could do that slightly differently. Again, I think it asks a different question, but actually not ignore the weakness, make it good enough, but also maybe how do we do this different? But again, as David in that video and Jessica so eloquently said, is like we've got to call it out properly. Be really clear about what you're seeing, because then you can do it. So I think for me, this is where the conversation switches, or we can start doing it a different way. It's not an ignore, it's not doing anything else. We can start using this information to just set people up a little bit more for success, because they're great at it and it gives them energy. Quicker, faster, whatever, because they love it. Now, there's a few things. I'll share you with another example of something you can use, and I will happily share this with you. So let me just go back to the presentation around actually there's you can have conversations with your colleagues or kind of yourself around actually kind of, let me go back to where we were, it's not telling me to resume, but actually there's something you can do, kind of strength spotting. Really simple kind of questions that you can ask yourselves around what do you do really well. The stuff you pick up really naturally, learn quickly. I suppose you're good packer for what that is for you. The stuff that energizes you inside and outside work. Now, the outside work was really interesting with the examples that people were giving earlier, because actually there's kind of untapped potential there. People lead really interesting and kind of exciting lives where they get involved in stuff that maybe, what would that be like if we could bring that into work a little bit more? So I think of people maybe who are quite creative. Now, creativity, and this is where it's not like the actual skill or the job or the operation bit, is actually the character, the person, the behavior, whatever we want to see. Well, how could we maybe bring that into work a bit more? Because that again is the things that bring people alive, and it'll have a massive impact on what the work that they do. Again, that flow thing we've talked about before, in support of your reason why from the last session. The stuff you look forward to doing, so your diary test and the stuff they're born to do. You could ask these questions, and I've got kind of what I will. You can have these and see these, because on that piece of paper you'll see it's from StrengthScope. Somebody I'm accredited to use there's 24 character strengths. That's really what I'm interested in. And I would suggest to you that actually, if you do these exercises and think of them, the VIA that's been very kindly shared by Christine. They will give you different strengths, but they'll give you 5. I'm interested, really, think about what your top 3 might be. So for me, I know that actually when I look at this, I know that actually leading is one of my key strengths. I like being involved and kind of getting in that. And again, you can be thinking about what your strengths might be. Find a job you enjoy doing and you never work again, David. Yeah, absolutely. Again, because it'll play to your strengths more often. I don't think you'll ever find anything that you're doing it all the time. There is stuff that you won't be so good at, and you need to be good enough. But if you start using it, how could we use this? So I would, if I was with you in the team, kind of face to face, we could play around with this and do a wheel for you as a team. So if you think if you're looking at that now and you can see it, what would be your top 3? And there's a brief description there. So if common sense, you make pragmatic judgments based on practical thinking and previous experiences. Is that one of your key things that energizes you? How could you use that more often? Or for me, courage or kind of collaboration, working together. You work kind of, as you say, collaboratively with others and overcome conflict and build towards a common goal. Again, what would you will have, they're not all down one of the 4 columns or pillars, they'll be all over the place. And what I'd be interested in you thinking, okay, what are my top 3? what would be those three that kind of I'm good at, but also gives me energy? And as a team, if you all brought those together, what would that look like in my wheel? And I'll send Abby all these slides so you could have a look at it. To what do you look like? Maybe what do you watch for? Because I know for me, a limiting weakness for me is detail orientation, because I don't look at it. It's a blind spot I have. I don't look at it and stuff like that. So I know that I might need to kind of tune myself into it, because I know I don't do it, or I make sure I'm working in a team where somebody has that as a strength, so therefore we could utilize each other a bit more differently, to work differently, structure it differently. Look at how we get our job done with the right people doing the right things. Anybody pick out anybody who can see that? Can you have you got something that you think, yeah, that's me? That's definitely one of my top 3 strengths. Again, go away, use it. I'll send it to you. Go away, use it, and just think about what would it be. I would think maybe some of the stuff, compassion would be really high in a lot of your teams. But again, you might have some stuff that you might need to watch for. Because actually there's a kind of warning sign, whoop, 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 whatever it is that there's something called strength in overdrive. Actually, if you do too much of it, okay, if you do too much of it, then it becomes a bit different. So actually, and this is the strength. So this is the converse of that kind of strengths. There's 24 strengths. This is if you do too much of it. So if we look at one of those, so common sense, you kind of, if you see that, you have a tendency to kind of to dismiss things. Okay, this is how you can come across to other people. If you see it, you make kind of you might stifle creativity because common sense gets in the way. So again, it's not something to stop doing. It's just be aware of it, that if you use it too much, that kind of how you can come across. And again, with creativity, maybe that kind of thing is like, it's too creative. You're just getting the balance right. But I think for me, whenever I look at it, looking in, these are the 24 strengths again, is finding your top 3, and how could you, in the job that you do now, how could you do that, bring that into play, as Marcus Buckingham says at the front, into play more often. So here's a question we can talk about. So how could we use this information, or what conversations could we have so we get people, including you, to bring their strength into play more often? What could we do? How could you use this? What are you thinking about? Any questions you've got for me on this around actually, and how do we use this information? Maybe it's a different conversation than you used to, because actually you're looking at people point out your weaknesses. But actually, for me, this is, again, one of the game-changing things that we can do. Yeah, giving praise, Dee, I think, yeah, and getting the right level. I think that's really key. Make sure people hear it. Make sure kind of it's just not to them, again, because if they, again, with that David Poulet video, if they hear you giving it and doing it, that actually, and it's specific, as Jessica said, be really clear about what it is you're praising, they will do more of it, because they love it. Yeah, David, task allocation I think is really interesting one, about how you, because what you all do will be really different, but actually how maybe we could do this a little bit differently to play to people's strengths, so we structure it differently. I mean, I worked with the police force once, and one guy had been off work with stress and stuff, because actually he couldn't fill in. He wasn't very good at filling in the report forms, and he was getting a hard time about it. But actually, when he was stepping back into work as part of the rehabilitation process, or kind of step back into work, they got him to do more stuff that he was really good at, and somebody else who was really good at it did that, and suddenly this guy came alive. And actually, for me, we've missed a trick there, or missed an opportunity to have a different conversation, because it was a different kind of thing. Valerie saying it would be nice to do in small teams so we can hold each other to create more support. Yeah, I think, Valerie, I think it's really nice. I will send you all the stuff so you can do it in your teams. It's a really nice exercise to do some strength spotting, because it's getting people to focus on what they do well and what energizes them. And then kind of using that little wheel I'll send you and the strengths. What does it look like? What do you look like? What are you high in? What maybe you're missing? And also, how do you then kind of look at how you could do that every day? Nikki's going, it's more about empowering people to use their strengths. All teams need different strengths and weaknesses to support. Yes, absolutely. The energizing thing is the bit that makes you feel alive. You talked a lot, the examples you were all giving at the start is when you felt alive. So how can we do that? Maybe even cross teams, so that actually we work collaboratively to kind of enable you to do that. So it becomes even more successful. People having the time and space for strength. Again, because I know you're really busy. And again, this is kind of giving you a different thing to focus on, but actually Belbin has, yeah, but David, I'm not so familiar with Belbin. I know Belbin, I did it years ago. But again, there's lots of different things you can use to enable you to kind of create that alive feeling for people. And the simplest thing, because if less than 20% of people in the UK get to use their strengths every day, it's a huge opportunity. Again, not the task, the stuff that energizes them, their character, their stuff. Any other thoughts or questions for me on anything that we've talked about? Because we've got 10 minutes left, and I kind of want some. I'd love to have some discussion about using this information for you, but also for anybody else. Again, I don't say it lightly. Game changer. Or any questions for me on it?
I was just thinking, Jonathan, about recruitment and how we structure our recruitment,
yeah,
and the questions we ask. It would be really nice. I know we usually put in something like, you know, what are your strengths and weaknesses, or could you give us an example of that? But I wondered if we could, as a service, work more boldly with that.
I like it, because actually, so what are your strengths? And it's like generally people give you probably a task or a way they work.
Yeah.
More interested in, for me, more interesting thing is character and the stuff that energizes you.
Yeah.
And actually, yeah, it could be with the interview process. Said retention, things like how could we maybe use it to be able to kind of, because as a team, you probably all of us will have blind spots. Most people recruit in their own image because we get on really well. However, not necessarily a great idea, because actually we'll lose stuff. If I didn't have somebody in my team, and I'm not saying that because I work on it, detail orientation, I've got a big blind spot. So maybe where are our blind spots, and maybe when we're looking at people, if that's a strength of theirs, again, not just the only reason, it's a part of the consideration, I think, Valerie. And Lindsay says, how do we encourage people to stay, keep that retention around actually how do we maybe shift some of this stuff so to get it so we more rounded. But I think having it as part of a recruitment process to understand it, what you need as a team, rather than for somebody to fit in and kind of, because yeah, do you know the worst answer I ever gave to an interview question, and I got through this interview, by the way, you'll never believe this. I was asked what my girlfriend at the time would think was my best asset, my strength. Do you know what I said to that? My legs.
Brilliant.
And I got through the interview, and I know that's the most hideous answer I've ever given to anybody, because I know that's not what you're looking for, but at the time I hadn't got a clue. I think I was 18. But again, humor then, he's got a sense of humor might have come out, and actually, again, you don't know, do you? But actually, for me, I think it's a great question to hold, Valerie and kind of Lindsay, around actually how do we start using this in enabling people to stay, but also what do we need as a team. So again, I will send you all the stuff, how you use it or any support you need on it, then give me a shout. But I think it's a great part of an interview process. Any other thoughts, questions, comments, things I can support you with? Or I'll definitely send, you've got the recording, you'll see it if you, yeah, Jessica.
Just building on the interview bit, thinking, so your answer wasn't a textbook answer, but sometimes you can just get a textbook answer if you ask something like that in an interview, can't you? Or what's your strength? Oh, well, I'm organised and I'm, task focused and all of those sorts of things. So I was just finding myself, how do you ask the question, or what is the question, to try and get the answer, the true answer? Because I think if you just ask somebody, oh, what's your strengths, I think the risk for me is you get that kind of
Oh,
you get the
absolutely.
textbook kind of what
Well,
they've Googled before the interview to that question, rather
Yeah.
than truly what their strength is.
I mean, that's where maybe you use different forms of profiling, questionnaires, stuff like that to try and get to it. Because I heard this. Now I'm not. I heard this, and I kind of, through all my experience, kind of think, yeah, I kind of get this. I heard somebody, I think it was on the radio, said an interview is a conversation between two liars.
Yes.
And it's like, I can't dispute that. I can't dispute that, because you know, don't you? You get the question, what are your strengths? Textbook answers coming out. You've got no idea. But actually, they're bigging up their CV. I don't know. But again, shifting in away from those textbook answers, tell me about a time when. I mean, finding a way, how do we get underneath the person to find out what they're really good at? Because we want to make best use of them. Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, tell me what you said. And again, maybe I did stand out as a candidate, but yeah, there's an 18-year-old and you go through the thing and you think, oh, crikey, I need the textbook answer next time. It's probably why I didn't get through the next one. Lindsay, I wonder whether recruitment isn't the best place to have that conversation for that reason. But once the person is in post, perhaps as part of the induction. Yeah, if you're the person you want, kind of, again, to help them develop, help them succeed, how do we make the best use of them? Yeah, again, Nikki, you're right. That's why some people more understanding of the actual person, about what brings them alive, what sets them apart. Psychometric tests get used all the time. Again, you can do all sorts of things to help just get under the skin of the person, so that you know, again, so when they're in post, you could understand, how do we get the best out of them. So that would be your ideal job. What would you be? Yeah, why? Yeah, what would be your ideal job and why? What does the best day look like? I'd be asking, like, what's the best day? Describe to me your best day or best part, because actually, again, it's like they're telling you the good stuff, and underneath that, like we did it in the why factor, those questions, best day in your current job. That kind of would, when they come alive, what are they doing? Again, inside and outside work, because if we could bring some of those elements from what you do outside of work into work, that's where you come alive. Americans are so much better at this. They're often called too confident. Yeah, well, again, I think this is where we can change stuff. Is we're brought, and again, we're not there to build ourselves up. We've been encouraged, I suppose. We probably, certainly, if I look at my own example of one, you're told what you can't do and what you shouldn't do and stuff like that, but you can do anything. And we've grown up with this kind of way of thinking about stuff, and I think that's just, yes, it's part of our environment, but actually we can now start re-looking at this. What brings us alive? What do I really enjoy doing? I changed careers to do what I'm doing now in the age of 42, I think. People thought I was mad, stupid, brave, probably all of those things, but actually for me, I'm much more alive than I ever have been, because actually I'm doing stuff that now follow my passion. I'm really positive about, but it energizes me. I could talk to you all afternoon about this stuff. I promise I won't. I know you're busy people, but because it's cause for that. But I did stuff the way people said I was successful because of what I did. But actually, it's kind of, how do we get underneath and understand the person so we can enable them to be them more often at work. Yeah, not blow your own trumpet, don't brag. But Nikki, as I said at the start, you're incredible, but you're an incredible person, capable of incredible things. We stop ourselves because of maybe stuff. Let's start changing that conversation. Let's start changing that thing around. Actually, let's understand what we're really good at. We don't need to go and shout it from the rooftops, but what you're really good at and what energizes you, and enabling people to do that more often changes the game. But we tend to, I don't know, again, reviews, ideal opportunity. As Jessica was saying, kind of that conversation or that good pack a bit is seeing people do things well and being really clear about what you saw them do is great. And it changes the conversations with others, absolutely. And we can change this bit by bit, but we get into a habit, or we've all grown up with the fact is reviews and things like that are all around strengths and weaknesses, and development plans go through around weaknesses. Doesn't have to be like that, I don't think. And actually using this and the research behind it, I think again, which is your strength are you most passionate about? I don't know whether that's a direct question to me, Lisa, but actually for me, again, it's, yeah, what are you most passionate about? What brings you the most energy? How could you bring that into play in what you do more often? They're the questions for yourselves, but also for your team members. How do we do this? How do we do this differently so we start enabling us to kind of feel alive? It's goosebump going down my back thinking what you could achieve with some of these conversations that you're already proposing to have. Trying to get some mental health nurse doing physical health tasks, immediate stuff, just doesn't play to their strengths, and some struggle. Yeah, again, but how? Again, maybe they need that. Again, that strength needs to be good enough. They need to know how to do it. But how do we structure that to enable them to really do what brings them alive? Great questions to ponder, consider. I'll get you the stuff across probably early next week to be able to start a different conversation. Any other thoughts? Any questions for me? In the crikey, it's 2 o'clock already. Can't believe that. Told you I could talk all day, but you already know that because I've done one session for you already. Thank you, Jessica. Really appreciate that. And again, keep calling out for your 5-year-old, making sure that she understands why you're thinking it's great. Brilliant. Listen, well, if I'll stick around till you've all disappeared, and if there's any other questions you want, please get in touch. I'm sure Abby, after today, if there's anything that you need, let me know. I will make sure you've got the slides, and if the videos don't work, I'll send you the links. But start thinking about what your character strengths are. Cool. Thanks, Valerie. Pleasure, everybody. See you all soon. Next one is in the diary, I think, already. See you soon.